On a Thanksgiving day like today, Roske, what do you have going on?
You know, first of all, I want to give thanks to you guys. Everything I've done in front of the camera with politics is thanks to this show. So really, thanks to you guys, thanks to Ted, thanks to Mike. You guys have a great team here, and it's really, I worked in television for 15 years in Los Angeles, and I never felt this sense of community or family. So thanks for having me a part of your group here.
We love cool to have you here.
It's great.
Really do appreciate it. I want to show a quick photo. You saw this a couple weeks ago, but this is a couple little pets of mine. There's
Thomas.
Thomas. Now Thomas is part of two bonded buddies, Thomas and Abigail. We got them from the ARL. With the holidays, we're now in holiday season. Go down there and pick up a pet. Here's what happened when we went down, because that's Thumper, the little California Pomeranian. We brought him from California to Iowa. And I thought there'd be a lot more time where Thumper would be by himself at the house. Hasn't worked out that way, but I'm like, let's go get him a little friend, a little furry friend. So we brought him to ARL. And if you're considering doing this, adding to your pets, they have a big walk-in kennel, pretty big size, and you bring your pet and you try them out with other animals.
It's an interactive area.
Yeah, to see, you know, you don't want to bring in pets totally random. So Thomas and Abigail went in there and they were kind of sniffing each other around, and the idea was to get one pet. But they said, you know, it's 2-for-1 cat day.
We're having a blowout sale.
Was it a Tuesday? It was 2 for Tuesday on cats.
It must have been, because Tuesdays are usually like there's got deals on Tuesday, but it was literally 2-for-1 cat day. And I start laughing. They said, no, absolutely, it's the same cost and da-da-da. And, you know, they were just lovely little animals. So we have had Thomas and Abigail ever since, and now we'll all cram into bed together, and they're great. So anyway, the holidays are here. If you're looking for a gift idea, go get someone a pet. They've got so many great animals who need loving homes. So ARL here in Des Moines, there's a bunch of locations. But let's talk about a little bit of politics. Last year, if you remember, there was no politics on the holiday show. They said, no, Brett, we're not going to do politics. But this year, glad you guys are having me on the Thanksgiving show, because I will happy to be watching the show. So I thought we would talk to Mark Leibovich is the chief national correspondent for the New York Times Magazine. He also is a best-selling author. He wrote the book This Town. He wrote the book Citizens of the Green Room. He also, as you watch this on Thanksgiving, if you want to pull up something after the show is over, you can read his article about my run for Congress. It's funny, you learned about me on sailboats and da-da-da. So that was in the New York Times.
That's cool.
So, as you folks know, I was in Milwaukee for the GOP debate, and the spin room atmosphere is fascinating. It is because you never know who you're going to bump into. You saw a couple weeks here on the show, I chatted with Montel Williams, who literally just happened to be there. I'm like, oh, let's talk about veterans issues. And all of a sudden, someone walks across the room, gives me a big hug, and it's Mark Leibovich. And I'm like, oh, well, of course you're here, but you know, everybody comes in, you don't know what's going to go on. So I wanted to talk to, I wanted to show this clip, because it's not Republicans or Democrats. Mark's style, Mark Leibovich, they call this the Leibovichian style in D.C. It's a little snarky, but it's a little, he's not very reverent when it comes to politics, and I thought it would be fun to see his 2 cents on the spin room and debates, etc. So here's Mark Leibovich. If you watch this show, you know who this is, the chief national correspondent for New York Times Magazine, author of This Town and Citizens of the Green Room, Mark Leibovich. How you doing tonight, Mark?
Great. It's good to be here. Thanks for having me on, Brent.
You know, so we chatted in front of the White House, and if you want to read an amazing story about my run for Congress, he wrote it for New York Times. We chatted in front of the White House about Iowa being a soundstage. Here we are in Milwaukee. We chatted like that last summer. How has this presidential campaign differed from others, or is it same old, same old?
Well, it's very different. It's a very different campaign in that the entertainment portion of the campaign seems to be endless. I mean, it's 4 or 5 months running. You know, there's this expectation that the seriousness, the ideas, like you know, it'll be a more sober, solemn spectacle at some point. It hasn't happened yet. But Iowa's a soundstage in that the initial point I made, I mean, is still true, which is that people use Iowans in many ways as props. The small coffee shop meetings, the farm meetings, the sort of Main Street meetings, and I think, you know, for as much as it is that people in Iowa and New Hampshire, you know, can give the appearance of asking tough questions and actually engaging in conversations and town hall meetings and stuff. I mean, in fact, the most important people in the room, the politicians, politicians will always say, are the cameras. And, in a sense, yes, there are real exchanges going on between real people and real politicians, but the quaintness of it is, in fact, the image that is being transported to the masses who are watching, which is, by the way, no affront to Iowa or New Hampshire, but, I'm just sort of parroting the cynical view that I think a lot of politicians take when they go, campaign in those settings.
What do you think of these GOP events, this one compared to the others and as a group?
I think that this one, again, there was sort of a veil of more seriousness here, and the moderators were patting themselves on the back, and they kept saying that this isn't about me. And by the way, anytime anyone talks about how it's not about me, it's always about you. That's what politicians are always saying. This election is not about me, it's about you. I think Hillary Clinton said it this week. Chris Christie said it last week. You get one of those every week. It's another one of the great tropes in American politics. Look, I think this was, compared to the last one, probably a more serious discussion, although I think what will be remembered from it are the exchanges, the back and forths, Donald Trump, chiding Carly Fiorina for interrupting, things like that. So I don't anticipate any great idea will come from this.
What's next on the Mark Leibovich bookshelf?
On the next, you mean what I'm reading or what I'm writing?
Writing.
What I'm writing? I'm writing a book I'm trying to write a book on the National Football League. I'm trying to do this town for the National Football League and sort of try to do a portrait of America somehow through the incredible American spectacle that is the National Football League at this point. And, it might even be a greater American spectacle than politics.
You had an expose about Manning?
Well, I had a big profile of Tom Brady.
I'm sorry, Tom Brady, and it was great. That's my mistake, but I read it. It was fantastic.
Thanks. Yeah, no, sports is a lot like politics. There's a lot of ego, a lot of money, a lot of spin, a lot of BS. But what I like about sports, and I do maybe one sports story a year, is that you can't really spin a bad loss. You can't spin, if you fail on the field, you can't come into a spin room afterwards and try to convince a bunch of people, like we all have here, that their team won when in fact you didn't. There's that numeric certainty that in politics you only get on election day. In a football game or a baseball game, you get it whenever there's a game.
What are your thoughts in general of this exercise, this spin room dance?
I think it's outlived its usefulness. I think, I've been saying for a few cycles now that spin room is essentially designated nonsense. We come here to be lied to. The spin room is essentially the lie room, and we fetishize it to a point where, it becomes its own spectacle, and we photograph each other, and people like you interview people like me, and then people like Molly over here write about it, or tweet about it, or whatever. And so, sorry, Molly, just used you as a prop. But no, but
using me as like a metonymic stand-in for the media group.
Whatever you can do, yeah. You guys, by the way, you guys know each other, right? No, so you introduced earlier. But no, I do think that one of the sort of innovations, if you could call it that, from this particular cycle is the candidates sort of keep coming into the spin room, which is it's different. It's it means for a kind of a different layer of nonsense coming into the spin room. And I think one of the reasons for that is because the field is so big, candidates really will just take any kind of shred of publicity or attention they can get. And of course, Donald Trump is the master of it because he's the one who wants for no attention whatsoever, and yet he can't get enough of it. So, the guy in the middle of the stage who is, drives ratings, who everyone wants to see, himself needs the sustenance, it seems, for just those little scraps of extra attention that you can get in the spin room afterwards. So that's kind of interesting.
So that's Mark Leibovich, Chief National Correspondent for New York Times. If you want to read a book about D.C. that is irreverent, his book, This Town is Amazing, his follow-up, Citizens of the Green Room, it's all these profiles. He wrote a great profile on Tom Brady that really digs into the NFL, and he said his next book, as you saw, might be NFL. Molly, the person Molly was talking to, is Molly Ball with The Atlantic. You've seen her as panelist on Meet the Press, etc. So that was at the end of the debate night, and being around Mark in that room is exciting because I have to go up to people to talk to him. They all come to him.
That's perfect. Anyway. Wonderful. I like his comment, designated nonsense, which kind of describes this program. Happy Thanksgiving, Brett.
Thank you
guys.
so much.